The floor is yours.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to our special program tonight. We do have a number of guests and we thank you for joining us. My name is Carol Skoglund and I have been a member of P.E.O. for 4 years and currently serve as our vice president of our chapter. And I'd like to take a moment just to describe our organization before I introduce Day Scott, our guest speaker. P.E.O. is a nonprofit and one of the oldest women's organizations in North America. The letters stand for Philanthropic Educational Organization. The original meaning of P.E.O., established by its 7 founders more than 150 years ago, is a secret we share upon membership. Through membership, P.E.O. has brought together more than 500,000 women in the United States and Canada who are passionate about helping women advance through education while supporting and motivating them. There are nearly 5,800 local chapters across North America. In terms of impact, P.E.O. members have helped more than 116,000 women pursue educational goals by providing over $383 million in grants, scholarships, awards, and loans. Why is our mission relevant? When you educate a woman, it creates a lasting impact on families, communities, countries, and the world. If you would like to learn more about P.E.O. or locate a local chapter near you, just let us know. We'd be happy to help and put you in contact. So now, let's move on to our program. Day has prepared an interactive presentation, and we will allow you to ask questions before the program ends. I'm happy, so happy to have Day with us today. She and I became friends over the past year after her bright, smiling face was on the cover of our P.E.O. record, our national magazine. I was so moved to read her story, her personal story, and I just had to introduce myself and get to know her. We recently met for the first time when she stopped over in Cleveland on her way to Detroit to visit family, which is where she is now. I feel blessed to have Day in my life, and I'm happy to introduce her to you. Day is a P.E.O. member with Chapter QB in Los Angeles. She currently lives in Lander, Wyoming, and is a certified naturalist, wildlife photographer, storyteller, and environmental educator. Day's affinity for birds came in 2019 because of a traumatic brain injury. Her passion in ornithology has led to many amazing opportunities, including her work being featured on Discovery, BBC America, and most recently teaching a birding photography workshop at the biggest week in American Birding 2021 festival, located in Oak Harbor, Ohio, hosted by the Black Swamp Bird Observatory. Day serves on the board of directors of the Wyoming Outdoor Council and is studying wildlife sciences at the University of Idaho. Day, are you ready to talk birdie to me?
I am, Carol. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. So as Carol mentioned, I have an interactive PowerPoint. I think that many of us are on mute, but you can unmute if you like, because we're gonna start having a conversation pretty fast, if that's okay. I am going to share my screen. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to give permission first for my screen to be shared. Sorry. Okay. One moment. Okay. Screen. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
We can see it.
Yes. Okay. So the presentation today is Talk Birdie to Me, Cleveland edition. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things, including, of course, fall migration. I can't not talk about fall migration, backyard birds, bird ID, attracting birds to your yard. I am going to share a bird story. I write these witty bird stories. We're going to talk about some local hotspots, some birding resources, and some tips and tricks in birding and bird photography. So the first thing, let's talk about fall migration. We are probably maybe in the thick of it over here in the Midwest. That's what I'm hearing. So you all are part of the Mississippi Flyway, and more than 325 bird species come through the Flyway. This is so important because this particular Flyway is very popular for waterfowl. So you have ducks and geese in the millions coming through this Flyway. Also, you can see that it extends from central Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, but you have birds going back and forth from the Arctic to the Patagonia. So I read that this was the largest Flyway, and I think it's because some species do join in this Flyway. So it meets up with the Central Flyway at some point heading south. Also in Cleveland, I was trying to search for a migratory rest stop, and it looks like Windy Park over in Whiskey Island is an excellent birding spot all year. Fall migration, spring migration. It seems like you can go over there at any time. And it's noted and recorded over 250 species. I checked for today, and today you can see up to 179 species right now over at Windy Park. So I really do want to go there before I head back west. Oops, let's go. So let's just get into this. This is kind of the interactive part. We're going to talk about backyard birds. Now, I haven't been in the Midwest for a long time, but I do know that a lot of, for me living in California and Wyoming, it seems like at least half of these birds, all of us are seeing year round. When I was there, I definitely saw, I think I saw all of these, maybe not the Carolina wrens. I didn't see any of those necessarily, but can you all tell me, can you all tell me what birds you're seeing that are not on this list in your yards? And you can unmute.
Shoot. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
It's not year round though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have catbirds.
Oh yeah. So many catbirds when I was there.
Downy woodpecker.
Yep, Downy woodpecker. So are you guys seeing the birds that are on this list?
Yes.
I might sue it, yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize for the background noise of the dogs. If I go try to put them somewhere else, they're just gonna get louder.
We live on a pond and we see kingfishers and herons.
Oh, nice. Yes, nice. So when I did a search, these are the birds that are pretty much year round. I did Cleveland. So for the backyard birds, these are the birds that are coming in right now. Some of these birds are also, so this is not an all-inclusive list.
All the time.
Some of these birds you saw during the summer. This list, there are way more fall and winter birds. These are just some of the most common ones that you'll see coming in that will stay throughout the winter. I have never seen a common redpoll, and we have those in Wyoming in the winter. I can't catch them. Purple finches, they come in flocks with the house finches, and there's one more finch that's red. Can't remember that finch, but sometimes they're really hard to distinguish when they're all in a flock like that. But look for purple finches in huge groups of house finches. You might see purple finches and one other finch. Also, you have some sparrows coming in, like the white-throated and the fox and the field sparrow, that are going to be coming in the fall and winter. The American goldfinch, so we can talk about this one for a minute. Carol and I went out birding, and we heard an American goldfinch, and we saw one, and it didn't look familiar. It looked familiar to me because I know what they look like in winter plumage. So if you're out birding now and you think you see something that looks like a bird that you know, it is probably that bird. It's just going to its winter plumage. So right now, the American goldfinch will look olive color. It will not be bright yellow. It'll kind of be olive color with the same wing bars and things like that, going into their winter plumage. You have the tufted titmouse. I've never seen a crossbill before. We also have those in Wyoming. It's pretty hard to catch, where you have to be at the cemetery. And we'll talk about cemeteries a little later.
We saw a red-headed woodpecker this year for the first time, coming to our feeders throughout much of the summer. And we also have the large woodpecker.
Oh, the pileated?
Yes, ma'am. The
Oh
pileated.
my goodness.
We
I
see
need your
a
address.
family. Yeah. We had a family of them that live near us. And so we get to watch when they bring the youngster over and then feed it and teach it how to feed.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to see a pileated woodpecker before I head back east. And I am still in Michigan, so it's not too far for me to get back that way. So those are your fall and winter birds. And basically this list is not all inclusive, but you can add this to this list, right? So you are seeing these birds in addition to these birds, plus a lot of birds that they're not even on this list that I'm sure you're seeing. I'm just basically talking about birds that are attracted to your feeders mostly. And this list, this is a fun list. So I spent some time in Cleveland with Carol and we went out birding several times. And these are the things that we saw. So this is, I would say this is like a more accurate list of what's going on in Cleveland right now, because I've been there, I think in the last month, twice. And so these are like the highlights. I tried to pick out the ones that you would see yearly. I saw my first red-headed woodpecker, and I was very excited. Also, there are some juvenile species like the eastern bluebird that when Carol and I both saw it, I did not, recognize what it was immediately, or I didn't recognize what it was at all. Until I really started looking, it was spotted. And at first I was like, oh, this must be some thrush, I don't know. But then I saw the blue, a little bit of blue. And there is no blue thrush in the United States, as far as I know. So when you get a closer look, you have some juveniles that are going to be here, and they are going to be the last ones to migrate out back down south. So again, you may see some birds that they just don't look right. That's what you'll say. This bird looks funny. This bird looks weird. It's probably a juvenile. So don't second guess yourself. If you know that it has the right size, shape, habitat, it just looks a little off in the coloration of the plumage. Just like the wood ducks right now. If you see some wood ducks, you're going to see a lot of females, and you're going to see males that look, I don't have a picture right now, but they look quite different. They're still colorful, but it's a different coloration, and they just look weird. When I first saw one, I'm like, what is this? And it was an eclipse drake. And so after the breeding season and the summer, they lose their plumage, or they lose that coloration, and they molt. And they molt, and they're still colorful, but they're basically naked looking. They lose their flight feathers, so they cannot fly. So you'll see them kind of hiding in the cut. That's what I call it. Because if there is danger, if there is something going on, all the females will fly off and because they still have their flight feathers, and the males will just go close to rocks or in the tules or in different types of vegetation in the water because they cannot fly away right now. Let's see, so that was my first juvenile eastern bluebird, because we have western bluebirds. My first red-headed woodpecker. We had fun with the warbling vireo, and we'll talk about bird ID. When you see a bird that you don't know, but you know the family, that's a good start. And so the vireos have a certain shape eye. It's just different. And I knew it was a vireo. I didn't know what vireo it was, but sometimes when we're doing bird ID, you have to start somewhere, right? So don't try to learn everything at one time. And we'll talk about that. Cedar Wax Wings are there and very funny to watch. They just fly from tree to tree. And if you've never seen a cedar wax wing, find a tree with berries right now, because they're on those trees with berries. They actually like to get drunk. And it is noted, you can see them falling out of trees from eating ripe berries. So that is a sight to see. We saw eastern wood peewee, which I am not good at flycatchers, and peewees, they're so hard sometimes, but I think Carol and I narrowed that one down to be an eastern wood peewee. And surprisingly, we saw a ruby-throated hummingbird. It's not a lot of hummingbirds around right now where we were, but it was amazing to see that. So this list is what's out there in your neighborhood right now, some of the highlights. Do you guys have any questions?
Hey, I have a question that Liz is asking.
Okay.
Do all birds have seasonal plumage for migration, or just birds that go, from the cold to the warm climates?
So let me answer that question the best way I know how. Most birds do molt, right? And I can follow up with her. She can email me and I can explain that a little bit more. But there is, birds do molt, and some of them molt more than once a year. All right, so now we're going to kind of play a game about what bird did I see. And so I have to talk about this because I get pictures from all over the United States because people know I'm the bird lady or the wilderness goddess. And so they send me a picture of a picture. And about the time it gets to me, it looks like just like a brown clump. I have no idea what it is. People take pictures of birds outside of their windows. So it has to go through the window pane and then the screen, and then it's on their porch. And when it gets to me, it doesn't even look like a little brown job. It just looks like a pile of brown stuff. So I'm going to show you all how to help yourselves in bird ID. And also, if you know someone who's really good at IDing birds, things to tell them to help them help you figure out what bird you saw. So for bird ID keys, and this goes along with what they teach over at Cornell Lab of Ornithology, you're talking about 4 different things here: the size, the color, the behavior, and the habitat. So what do I mean when I say size? These are basically what we're comparing the bird against. Is it really tiny, right? Super tiny? Is it a little bigger than that? What about a little bigger than that, like a crow? And then the Canada goose is a huge bird. So usually when you ID, you can quickly figure out what's around what size it was or a size it's between for the size. So for the color is tricky, right? Because if you have a bird flying just right past you, you may say you saw a purple bird, right? Because if the bird is blue and the sun is shining and it's going fast, it might look a little purple. So if you probably see something purple, it's probably more like a blue color. But if you can get a good look on the bird, don't try to memorize the bird if the bird is not in your presence for long, because I guarantee you, when you start thinking about what you saw, you're going to get all mixed up. And so if you can just look quickly what are the main colors of the bird? That's a good place to start. And what did you notice in the pattern of light or dark? So now you have a size, you have a color. And so the behavior is important because you wouldn't necessarily see a Canada goose at your feeder. Well, I hope you probably wouldn't. So you can narrow down some birds that you've seen just by knowing their behavior. And this is your feeder, swimming on the ground, trees and bushes on the fence wire, soaring or flying. There are other things that birds do that are not exactly on a fence or a wire. They may be on a bird bath, right? They may be on the roof of a house, but the closest thing that you can find that the bird is doing. And if you're watching the bird, it's probably moving around, doing different things, or on, at your feeder, and then on your fence, and then it may be in the bushes too. And then the habitat. Habitat is important because are you in a forest, grassland, water? This is just helping you narrow down. I added my backyard and my local park, meaning your backyard and your local park, because those are, even though you can't really select these things if you're using like a bird app, they will have some type of location and can probably narrow in on your location if you're using an app. But you know that if you live in the forest, right, and then the bird was in the forest, that kind of thing. There are some birds that are common in grasslands and common in water. So if there's a bird that you saw in the water, it's important for ID to help you that the bird was in the water and it wasn't in your backyard. And not saying that you never saw that bird in your backyard before, but for the purpose of ID. So you have size, color, behavior, and habitat. So now we're gonna do this one together. And so does anyone know what this, oh, sorry, don't answer that question. So the size. So what size is this bird?
Small.
Is it a Canada goose size?
No.
No. Can someone?
Sparrow size?
Yeah. Does everybody agree that it's a sparrow size?
Yep.
Does anybody not agree? No? Okay. Correct. So we got the sparrow. What about the color? What are the main colors?
Yellow. Gold.
Yellow. Yep. Gold. What else?
Black.
Black. Yep. So we plug in yellow, black, white. Also, yeah. So you have about, if you're using the Merlin Bird ID app, and we'll talk about that later, I think they give you 9 colors, but they won't let you choose 9 colors. They only let you choose certain combinations because they know there is no bird here that would be a bright red, a chocolate, a blue, and a pink kind of thing. So it won't let you choose certain combinations because of that. So it kind of helps you narrow down. So color. So correct. So you would plug in yellow, black, and white for this one. What about the behavior? What is this bird doing?
Feeding.
Yeah. And what do you think this bird just got finished doing or may do next?
Sitting on a bird bath.
What may it have done before this, or what may it do after this?
They tend to flit around the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Eating at a feeder, maybe?
Eating at a feeder, tree, or bushes. So when we're talking about habitat, you're not going to be able to select the bird was sitting on the bird bath kind of thing. But think of just about if you're watching the bird, what else has it been doing? And most likely these goldfinches, like you said, just like to float around in the trees. And I mean, I've seen one sit on the wire, but they're not just going to be sitting on the wire a long time for this particular bird. Okay, so I chose in trees or bushes because it's probably the last thing or the next thing it's going to do. Also, if you chose the feeder, that is probably correct. That is correct. It probably is going to your feeder if you have a feeder. And then the habitat, I put my backyard. When you're using the app, it'll get your location. And this bird is an American goldfinch, if you did not know. And this is the American goldfinch in its breeding plumage. All right, so we are going to, I don't have any answers for this, but Carol is going to jump in and she's going to grab her phone and do the Merlin ID app. And if anyone else has this app on your phone, you can join in this exercise.
I am ready to go.
Okay, Carol. So, and then this is everyone participating. We're going to kind of guide Carol through this. And Carol, is it possible you can you show your phone sort of while you're doing this? Or a little bit, show it every time when we're about to do the next step?
I'm just not sure how I would get, how I would be displayed right now because of the presentation mode.
Well, can you just turn your phone around so that we can see your screen? Okay. So I'm not even sure if you guys can see that good. So this would be the first step, is the size. This is what the Merlin bird ID, and it has the size. So what size would this bird be if we can guide Carol to put in the size for this bird?
Large.
Canada goose.
What do you think? You think it's the size of between a crow and a Canada goose?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
Yes.
between the two.
Okay.
Got it.
So she
Done.
put that in. All right. So next is the color. What is the main color?
White.
White.
White. So Carol, can you show that again? The colors?
It's, wait, I did
Go
dance.
back.
Sorry, hold on,
Yeah.
go back. So there's 9
So,
colors. Yeah.
9 colors. We really don't need to choose yellow or black for this one. We can just the main color. We can just choose white for this. And then what about the behavior? What is it bird doing?
Waiting.
In the
Water.
water.
Yep.
Swimming or
so,
waiting.
yep. So that is a choice. And the habitat.
Water.
Yeah. Pond.
Yeah. And what does that say, Carol, for your habitat? Does it say anything for the habitat?
No, just
So-
picking for our
So
location.
for the habitat, for Merlin Bird ID, is going to use your navigation, and so it knows where you are. So Carol plugged in all of those things, and then what do you hit next, Carol?
Now it pulled up my list.
Yeah, so what did it suggest that the bird is?
Egret.
It hasn't though. We might have picked the wrong size because the first thing it pulled up is a
Okay,
gull.
so what is the second thing it pulled up? Because there's usually a list.
Then there's a tern. So we might not be picking
Okay.
the right size,
Oh, I think
So-
it needed to be bigger.
right? So we'll go back, want to change the
Yeah,
size.
we'll go back and change the size.
Okay.
And I did. What about an egret?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. We're just walking through the
We're just
process.
trying to use the app. So I just changed, I went back to that first size and put it on the largest size then. We just moved it
Okay.
up one. And we'll leave everything else the same.
Yep, and it
Okay.
may come back as a great egret.
Okay. We
Did
see
you get a
plenty of
list?
geese around
Oh,
here,
yep,
but it's
yep.
the goose.
So the second choice,
And then the second choice was the blue heron. We're
yep,
getting
it's gonna
close.
go down the list. So you guys can see how we put in almost the exact information of this bird, and it's still on the ID on the app. It really can't identify it. I don't use the app. I only use the app when I'm out and about, but I use my book to try to find birds. Does anyone know what this bird is?
Great. It's an egret, isn't it?
Egret,
What kind of egret?
Great.
snowy,
Yes.
snowy.
Who said snowy?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a snowy egret. I thought that was going to be really easy for the app, but it wasn't. So hopefully this will go faster. It's a snowy egret. All right, let's do this one. Different habitat. What size is it?
It's large.
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 So we're going to go with Canada goose size, right?
Yeah.
Larger. What color is this?
Looks like it's black, and
Brown.
white, and brown.
Yep. So I would put in those 3 colors, probably brown, black, and white. I think those are good 3 colors. What is the behavior?
Flies.
Yep,
it's
it's
predatory.
soaring.
Soaring.
Yeah, and we're not gonna worry about the habitat because it's gonna pick up our habitat. And Carol, what came up?
Bald eagle.
A bald eagle. So who thinks this is not a bald eagle?
Looks pretty much the same as my picture.
Okay, Carol, put that down. All right. So this is another thing that we're talking about so the ID, the Merlin ID bird ID'd it, but that does not mean this is our bird, right? That's just a guide. This is a bald eagle, I will tell you that. But it looks funny, right? It looks weird. So why made this bald eagle look like this?
It's young.
It's a baby. It's young.
Yeah. It's a juvenile. Now, does anyone know what a golden eagle looks like?
Oh, close to that.
Oh, yeah. And so when you're doing bird ID, it gets kind of wild because this bird looks so much like a golden eagle. And it's the coloration in the wings that it's a lot of things that are different. But just to the, I guess, the naked eye, the first thing you can notice between a golden eagle and a juvenile bald eagle is some of the coloration under the wings, right? And we're not going to go into detail, but this is a juvenile bald eagle. So be ready to be this descriptive when you're trying to get someone to figure out what bird this is. You can look at the details like the face, if you can get in close enough to the face. It definitely has the mouth of a bald eagle. I mean, there are a lot of characteristics and features that I know it's a bald eagle. But it is really hard to tell. I'm looking at a picture, so imagine if I'm looking straight up in the sky, even with binoculars. It's pretty hard to tell. Bald eagle. All right, now we finish with some bird ID by vision. We're going to check our hearing right now, which I am not a great birder by ear. I think birding by ear for me, and maybe for a lot of people, comes from what you see in your backyard, which you can see immediately. And I feel like as soon as I'm out of my backyard and I'm in like a large area, I'm like, that sounds familiar, but I don't know what it is, kind of thing. And so here we go.
Canada goose. Canada goose.
Yeah.
Who said Canada goose first?
Ellen.
So this was actually for a prize.
Ah.
And let's see what that bird is. I think it's gonna play again, I'm sorry. That was right. That is a Canada goose. So like I said, birding by ear it's so hard for me. If I'm in one park, one area all the time, I can pick up the calls. No, I'm not gonna say that. I can pick up the songs. I can't really pick up the calls that great and the flight calls, but I think the best way to bird by ear is to go to the same place all the time, as often as you can, as long as you can, and learn the birds in the area, and that'll help you learn their sounds and calls. So there are apps, or you can just go on the computer, and if you know what's in your area at your local park, you can listen to those sounds before you even go out, and then you can start matching our bird song or a call to the actual bird. So the next thing we're going to talk about is attracting birds to your yard. And this is, I'm going to focus on the fall and winter since we're in those seasons. So there are so many different types of feeders. We won't go into that, but different types of feeders, fruit. And I suppose if you're going to be putting out fruit in the fall and winter, I would just put it out in very small amounts and know that your birds are going to eat it, or it's going to be frozen. I don't do fruit in the fall and winter. For your bird seed, you can use mixed bird seed all year. But I would say don't get the cheapest bird seed because it has a lot of millet in it. And the birds don't like millet, most of your songbirds. So they're going to scrape it out and it's going to be all over. It's very messy. So usually the cheapest mixed bird seed is filled mostly with the millet, and this is just little white balls. So I just try to buy like the next to the not cheapest for me. The other thing about millet is you had your cleaning crew comes. Does anybody know the cleaning crew bird species?
Oh,
Can you guess who's the cleaning crew of your yard?
crows, blackbirds, blue
Mm,
jays.
Blue jay,
Pigeons.
blue jay.
a little smaller. Or I mean, okay, so the blue jays will
Squirrels.
just eat anything and everything. But it's the mourning doves and Eurasian collared doves. Those are my backyard cleaning crew. So when I worry about the millet being all over and being messy, I know that I have the doves to come through and they like to clean up and eat the millet. Also very popular for the winter and fall are suet. And I've bought suet in I think 3 different forms. I can't remember the third one, but I like the suet balls. They have feeders for the suet balls and the suet blocks. And this covers a lot of birds. Like birds that they don't even list like suet will eat suet. Birds will eat what's available, what you put out.
And Mark's is the cheapest.
Mm-hmm. Suet, and then black oil sunflower seeds, that's an all year. You can put that out all year. And I just started doing the peanuts. And the funny thing about most of these things that the squirrels like them too. So you're going to be feeding more than birds, but you already probably know that if you have bird feeders. The next thing is native plants. And, you know, this is more something in the spring, the native plants. And then the bath. So if you're gonna keep your bath out in the winter, it's not big enough for the birds to ice skate, right? So they do have heaters for your bath, and that does sound luxury and luxurious, but they're not too expensive. And if you want your birds to have fresh water and water, which we do, you can look into getting a heater for your bird bath. I do not use a heater for my bird bath. I put my bird bath up for the winter.
I know they can look really cute and they look like little rocks. My dad definitely like strung an extension cord from the house to the bird bath during winter. We've had
I
all
love
sorts
that.
of animals.
I
in the
love it.
nest.
I mean, you can do, I didn't put any pictures, but I did this in my biggest week in American birding presentation. I have all sorts of perches up that I just got from fallen trees and all these branches. So a lot of perches in my yard and like different things you can do for the birds to make their habitat really friendly and make them feel welcome. I know when I put up all the perches, the squirrels thank me because they thought I had created them a slack line to get to all the food. Let's see. So the next thing.
Can I ask a question about feeding birds?
Yes.
Okay, I want to know, like, I've heard one thing that you're not supposed to feed birds because then they depend on it, and then if you stop feeding them, you know, I don't know, they'll all die or something, I guess. But and then the other question I have is, we want to feed birds at our cabin, and we're only there usually on weekends and not all the time. So what I was thinking is I'd put the feeders out, but then bring them in when we're gone, especially because it would attract bears and stuff. So what about all that? Can I feed birds? Should I not be feeding the birds?
Okay, so definitely we can't really get into that too much here because we have limited time. So if you think about how much habitat we've taken away from the birds, that's how I use my judgment in feeding the birds, right? We take away their habitat. They don't have the resources that they need just globally, right? Also, when you're talking about migrating and them, so the migration, them having enough fuel to make it back all the way, I think we as humans, that's the least we can do is help the birds feed the birds. So that's how I feel about it. Yeah. About the cabin, I would definitely bring the food in and only use it when I'm there. Also, you're probably still attracting the bears while you're there. So just be on the lookout, just watch out. If you see bears, if you see bears, I would not be concerned about feeding birds. If you're attracting bears closer and closer to your cabin, because I don't think they can distinguish bird food and food and all these different things. So you definitely I don't think you want to do anything that brings them closer and maybe bring danger to you and your family.
Thank you.
So while we're talking about this, we want to talk about staying informed and being responsible, right? So I don't know if you all know this, that there was some mysterious disease, I believe it started on the East Coast during the summer. And just make sure you're staying informed about birds if you're feeding birds. And this was just put out last week that Ohio got the clear to start feeding birds again. Now, you have to use your own judgment as well. So this is feeding birds through a feeder. Birds congregate. There are other ways to feed birds that they're not going to necessarily all congregate together. And so some people, I know a lot of people who just fed the birds through this whole thing, but they did find creative ways to feed the birds and did take down their feeders. If you are going to keep your feeders up, you wash them with bleach, like I think 1 part bleach, 3 parts water every week. These are some of the things they recommend anyway, even if there's not a disease going around, because every year it's becoming more frequent that we're getting these diseases, these birds. I wouldn't be surprised if one comes in fall migration like it did last year with the pine siskins. So just stay informed and make sure that, just like with any kind of news, not that there's a lot of fake bird news out there, but you want reputable sources, right? So for Ohio, I believe this is I think you guys got the Department of Natural Resources in Ohio, right? That's your authority for wildlife. And so the Ohio Division of Wildlife is the division under the natural resources. Also your Audubon. I would say, like, it's good to talk to your friends and neighbors about feeding birds, but I would not rely on that person giving me all the information or all the information you need to make a judgment for yourself. So always check in with a reputable source. So the next thing, I don't know if some of you know, I do bird stories. So I thought that I would do a bird story on a bird that people just despise. The grackle is a real bully in the backyard, but they are absolutely gorgeous. And so I'm going to read this story to you. And Carol, am I doing okay? I'm almost at the end.
Yes, and of course, your creative stories are kind of like the icing on the cake here today.
Yes. Okay. So this grackle may be considered common, but it's definitely not ordinary. Common grackles have no chill when it comes to showing up uninvited and basically loitering. No dine and dash for them. They'll eat and then stick around the queso joint in hopes of getting more food, even if it involves stealing it. These boisterous blackbirds belong to the Iceridae family and are related to the bobolink, American blackbirds, and orioles, meadowlarks, and cowbirds. Common grackles are very interesting. They practice a behavior called anting, which involves rubbing ants on their feathers. There have been numerous studies done about this strange behavior that's practiced by over 200 bird species. From the extensive research, the scientific conclusion on why they practice anting seems to be, it feels good to them. Another fascinating thing about these iridescent Iceridae is that they have magnetite in their necks, heads, and beaks. This mineral allows them to use the Earth's geomagnetic fields to navigate. Maybe that's how I found 5 of them in my backyard sanctuary 4 days ago. They are currently walking around like security. So now you know at least something positive about grackles after they bully all the birds in your backyard. All right, so we're gonna, this next part is gonna be really fast. So these are some of the hotspots around the Cleveland area or Cleveland Heights area. I mentioned the cemetery. So the cemetery is an amazing place to bird. I know it's very creepy, but it's one of the top places to bird wherever you go. Windy Park, this is the place that we talked about. That's a good spot all year round. The Fairport Harbor Lakefront Park, Shaker Lakes. This beautiful heron was taken at Shaker Lakes when Carol and I went. The Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve, Rocky River Park, anything that's a lakefront, you're gonna get a lot of your waterfowl and your shorebirds. And almost any of these habitats around fall and spring migration are gonna be probably rich in diversity. Birding resources. So books, my go-to is Sibley's Bird East. I also have Kaufman Field Guides. Birds, I always use books. I think they're, of course, more reliable than an app, but they are also heavy and bulky to carry a book while you're in the field. The apps, I recommend Merlin Bird ID. With this one ID, you're going to be able to get what we walked through, the exercise we walked through today about IDing a bird. Photo, meaning that you can upload a photo and they'll try to ID it by then. They just added sound maybe 6 months ago. So sound, they have a lot of work to do in sound, right? It has about 400 plus birds in it, but it does get a lot of birds confused and it doesn't pick up birds like it should. So I would not have a sound app on birding and use that to make my life list or anything without verifying that you saw the bird. Also, you can explore birds. You can just go right to literally the spot that you're standing and it'll tell you what birds should be in that area. The other app is also by Cornell, it's eBirds. This is if you want to submit sightings and have a virtual life list, you can use eBird. For events and advocacy, there's Audubon of Greater Cleveland. There's something called the Kirkland Bird Club and the Ohio Ornithological Society. For feeders, I love Wild Birds Unlimited, but that's because everywhere I live, I developed a relationship with the owner of the store, their franchises. So I think it's a good place to get bird food if you're not getting it from Amazon or Walmart or whatever. For native plants, so you have Elizabeth in your group who did a wonderful presentation on native landscaping for pollinators. So she's probably, her knowledge is probably gold in helping someone with the native plants that they can use in their yard. There's also a native plant society of Northeastern Idaho. So every native plant society I've ever spoken to, there is some expert in there they'll tell you what plants you need to attract specific birds. And if you want some education, I know Carol and I both have taken courses at Cornell Lab of Ornithology. The price ranged from very inexpensive to maybe $300. The courses are always on sale and they are amazing courses. They may be a course on just bluebirds or sparrows, and they may start at like $15 sometimes when they're on sale. So that is a good resource for bird education. So I am going to leave you with some birding and bird photography tips from some of my closest friends, my closest wild friends, the ones that are not human. So go out near sunrise and sunset like a mallard duck. Be as quiet as a groundhog. Blend in like a common nighthawk. Move slowly like a turtle. Go low like a not a double created, I'm sorry, a double crested cormorant. Go zigzag like a cottontail rabbit. Stay focused like an osprey. Be curious like a chickadee. Be patient like a heron, encase the joint like a common grackle. And this is my contact information. I have a website, I'm on Facebook, and I am on Instagram. Also, you can find my email address probably on my website, or I have it if you would like it. And I'll throw this slide back up, and I'm going to go just to this Q&A. This is Carol and I don't know where we are. Carol, you can tell them where we were.
This was at the Lake Erie Bluffs near Perry, Ohio.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So this was a wonderful time with Carol out birding. And that is the end of my presentation.
So, Day, somebody that I went to college with, and this is quite a long time ago because I graduated in 1968, but his name is Donald Kreutzma, and he is an expert in bird calls. And he actually lives in California now.
Oh,
and he and his son biked all the way across the United States, and this was some time ago at this point, but and then recorded the calls of the birds and found that there were dialects, that different birds in different areas have slightly different songs based on that area. So it was, but he's written some books, and he also has some books that you can for kids, that you press a button and it'll give the bird call, and there'll be a little story about the bird, and so the kids can start learning bird calls.
I love that, Jan. It's funny, one time Carol and I went out and I was hearing a chickadee, but it did not sound like my chickadee in Wyoming. And it was not a Carolina chickadee, it was a black cap chickadee. And it's just like you said, the chickadee in Cleveland area does have just sounds slightly different than the chickadees in Wyoming. So that dialect is so true. Yeah. Any more questions? Comments?
Hey, I have a question. For someone who has never birded or like knows very little about birds, like I know the blue jays, I got that. Where would you recommend starting?
In your backyard. Start in your backyard with a bird guide. If you're an artist, even if you're not an artist, you can if you get a sketch pad, you can start writing down what you're seeing, do a quick sketch of it. If you don't, because it's going to be hard sitting in your backyard trying to flip through a book, trying to figure things out. So if you have a sketchbook that you can just write down little notes about what you've seen. I think one of the most exciting things for me is when I go out birding, is to try to figure out the birds that I don't know. And I try not to do it right that moment, though it's hard, but I love coming home and from all the details I've either written or I have usually a photo, trying to just research and see what bird that is. I would get a pair of binoculars. I can send you an email to recommend you binoculars. You can get a decent pair for less than $100, but close to $100, like really, really good binoculars for that price. So a decent pair of binoculars, a good bird book. I would go as local as possible for the bird book. So local as possible, I would definitely get one for the region. So you would get East book, but if there's someone, sometimes they have even more local bird books that I found on Amazon, and you may just be able to get a bird book for Cleveland if that'll help. And then you can always just text me or email me or call me, and I can help you.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question if anybody wants to be the final question for Day.
So a question after your question or before? So I'll go back to my other screen just so if you do have questions, feel free to email me or jump on my social media. If you want my phone number, I can give you my phone number. You can text me anytime through the night about a bird. I will answer you.
Well, I want to go ahead and wrap up our program, and Day, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. This was wonderful, and we hope to have you back to Cleveland soon, and maybe we can do another program next season. So thanks everyone. We're going to say goodbye to our guests. Feel free to just drop from the Zoom, and our local chapter is going to move into some business now.
Thank you all so much for having me.
And Day, if you would like to stay for our meeting, you are definitely welcome to stay as a P.E.O. So that's up to you with whatever your time is. We'd love to have you.
I am actually going to go